because growing up, I'm of a certain age where there was Orion Pictures was around, and seeing the spinning star logo at the very beginning was always really cool. And they had a lot of really great movies, but the studio had money issues for a long time, and they ended up going bankrupt, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, and had sold off its assets to MGM, which, if you watch the movie now, MGM logo pops up in the beginning before the Orion logo.
Uh-huh.
But it's weird that they had such money issues. I think they just didn't have a whole lot of big hits for the movie or for the studio. But I mean, they had, like, in less than 10 years, maybe 7 or 8 years, they had 4 Best Picture winners. Because they had Amadeus, they had Platoon. The year before RoboCop, Platoon was the Best Picture. A couple years after RoboCop, they have Dances with Wolves, they have The Silence of the Lambs, both Best Picture winners. But I think their big hits weren't enough to bring the studio out of its money trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I shouldn't say UHF is a hit, because it was not. It's a huge cult movie, though. But, like, they have UHF, they have Spinal Tap, they did the original Terminator. All the Bill and Ted's movies are Orion. Caddyshack is Orion. So they had a lot of good movies, but I don't think a lot of them were huge money makers, unfortunately, and that's why they ended up going bankrupt.
I think it's worth noting that they've made a return. They're back now, right?
Yeah, I see that logo pop up every now and then, but I think, you watched Bill and Ted Face the Music. It has the Orion logo at the beginning, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. It'd be cool if they got back in the game again, even though I'm sure that they're still under the MGM banner, which is actually under Sony now. MGM ended up having money troubles in the early 2000s and sold off to Sony.
I had a quick question again for you.
Sure.
So in our last episode, I think it was Onaris who brought up I guess they're replacing Leo the Lion with like a CGI version of the logo. And I was MGM goes back to like the early days of film. Yes.
And it has always been an actual lion, video of an actual lion. I mean, in the early days, of the logo, it was actually, it was clearly a real lion that they had shot on film that does the roar. But yeah, they're replacing it with the CGI lion.
So what do you think about that? Any thoughts?
I mean, it's not broke, so why are you trying to update it? I mean, MGM isn't a real studio anymore. Like I said, they're under the Sony. They're owned by Sony now, but still, the regular lion worked for so many years. MGM has not updated that logo in years because it doesn't need to. So why put in the CGI line, which is just dumb? In my opinion, I mean, they already have the lion doing the roar. Why not keep it?
Yeah.
So, Orion is going to do RoboCop. Did you read who they wanted for the role?
As Robo?
Yeah.
If I did, it's escaping. I did read it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I do know that Weller got it based on his slim physique and his ability to kind of show emotion with the lower half of his face, correct?
Correct. That's two reasons. Another reason is he was cheaper than the guys that they wanted.
Ah, okay.
He commanded a lower salary.
Gotcha.
I mean, I don't know what the what the conversion rate is for 1987 dollars, but even 10 million, which was its original budget before up to 13, seems fairly low for a pretty big sci-fi movie, considering what's in this movie. So I think they were a bit afraid of the movie because they weren't sure it was going to be a hit. I mean, it's called ROBOCOP. That's not the greatest title. That sounds like a very B movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I love it now because it's giving you exactly what you want. But at the time, you hear RoboCop and you think, oh, that's probably some shitty, going to be like straight to video type movie. So I think Orion was kind of, we'll give you guys this much money, and that's it. So find us the cheapest actor you can. So originally, who they want is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Obviously, he's the biggest action star on the planet at the moment.
Okay.
At the moment of this film, has a huge movie this same summer, a classic action sci-fi movie this same summer. You know what it is?
Predator
comes out the exact same summer as this. So they want Arnold Schwarzenegger for the title role. Verhoeven actually wants Rutger Hauer, his pal, to be in RoboCop. They actually consider Michael Ironside.
Okay.
At the time, who I think turned it down. But Michael Ironside reunites with Verhoeven in Total Recall because he's the villain, one of the villains in Total Recall. And again, he shows up in Starship Troopers for him. And then, Armand Asante, who I think actually auditioned for it, Tom Berenger, James Remar, these guys. I don't know what the story with Schwarzenegger was, if he turned it down or they were worried about it. A big part of why some of these people did not want to do the movie was because A, they were in the suit and their faces is covered up for the majority of the film. But also someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rutger Hauer are bigger guys, so if they put them in this suit, which is already going to add a lot of bulk to your frame, they were worried that by having, bigger guys like Rutger Hauer and Arnold Schwarzenegger in there, it would just look ridiculous. The suit is going to be like Michelin Man.
I think I could see Rutger before Arnold. Arnold just doesn't seem plausible whatsoever.
No, and especially at that time, he was pretty big.
Yeah. Also, wasn't he coming off of, or did this come out at the same time as the original OG Terminator?
This is a few years after the Terminator.
Okay.
Terminator is in 1984.
Did you know? Oh, okay, 1984. Wow. Have you seen? I don't know if it's the original, if they've scrapped this trailer since, but they actually used the main theme for the original Terminator in one of the teasers for RoboCop, one of the original teasers.
I read that in my research, but no, I haven't seen that. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, he's like walking through fire, and you can clearly hear the Terminator theme song for the RoboCop.
Well, we've had this discussion before about the music that's used in trailers or as temporary tracks in films. Because the Orion Pictures, I should say, owned the Terminator because that was their movie. So they owned the rights to that music, and that's why that music showed up in that trailer. But no, that's crazy. I'll look that up when we get off the air here. So they want they want Schwarzenegger, they want Rutger Hauer, but those guys are too big. The suit's going to look too bulky on them. It's going to look ridiculous. So they didn't go with them. They ended up going with Weller for those reasons. Have you ever seen The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai?
No.
It's a movie I've always wanted to see and just never had the opportunity to see. This was a movie that Peter Weller did, like sci-fi cult movie that came out, I think 84 or 85.
Okay.
So he was kind of known for that, but he really wasn't a known actor at the time. Like Buckaroo Banzai was kind of like his only major credit, and even that was not a hit. But Weller, has the face for it. He actually wants to be in the movie. He commanded a much lower salary, so that's why they ended up going with him. But by the way, I have to shout it out because it's one of the best. I shouted out Leviathan on the show before because that's another movie I used to watch a lot of with Peter Weller and Ernie Hudson, which comes out a couple years after this. But I really want to shout out, if you've ever watched Fringe.
Yes.
Which I loved for at least the first 3 seasons. Peter Weller is in one of the best, if not the best, Fringe episode. It's called White Tulip. And he plays a guy who is time traveling to try to save his wife. His wife ends up dying in a car accident. And he figured out how to travel through time. He doesn't have a machine. He does it by implanting pieces of metal and machinery underneath his skin. And then he's able to kind of get into this magnetic field and transport himself through time. And he keeps missing, he doesn't have an exact date or time that he can actually land on. So he keeps having to go back and try again and again and again. And each time it's kind of causing, a paradox or messing with the space-time continuum. So the Fringe team is out to stop him. And he is trying to save his wife from this accident. And do you want me to spoil how it ends or not?
Let's see. I'll look up the episode.
Okay, look up the episode. It's called White Tulip. I think it's in the 2nd season of Fringe. It's so good. It's my opinion. It's the best episode of that show.
Okay.
And Peter Weller is so goddamn good in it. So definitely check that episode out if you can. I think Fringe is available on Amazon.
Has Peter Weller done anything contemporary besides his small role on Sons of Anarchy?
The last movie I remember seeing him in was Star Trek Into Darkness.
Okay.
He's like he's the main. I shouldn't say the main. The main villain is the fake Khan that Benedict Cumberbatch played. But Peter Weller is one of a smaller, or plays like a smaller villain in that movie. That was the last thing I remember seeing him in. He doesn't do a whole lot now. He's actually is he a history professor or an architecture professor?
Really?
Yeah, like a pretty well-respected one, too. He doesn't do a whole lot of acting.
Okay.
These days.
He's got to be, what is he, in his 60s now?
I would ballpark him in the 60s, maybe pushing 70. But yeah, he's awesome in this movie. If we haven't said it, he's great.
Oh, definitely.
So I'm glad they got him. Some other casting news. We've talked about Lewis, which is Nancy Allen, who's great in the film. I don't know if you know who Stephanie Zimbalist is.
No.
I've heard that name before. She was originally cast as Lewis, but she was on a very popular television series at the time called Remington Steele.
Okay.
Which was supposedly canceled and then renewed at the last minute because it was fairly popular or had like a big following. So she has to drop out of ROBOCOP, and then that's why they went with Nancy Allen. So she loses out on this part in this great movie, but her co-star on the show is a real sad tale of losing out on a film or a film franchise. Her co-star on the series is Pierce Brosnan, who was, I think, the pick by the Broccolis to be the next James Bond.